The tension in the neighborhood had become unbearable. Every glance, every whisper felt like a trap. Sarah knew that the HOA would not back down so easily. They had tasted her resilience and were preparing for one last attempt to assert dominance. Late one evening, a new notice arrived. The board claimed that her gnome's reflection at sunset disturbed the peace of the community. The absurdity was maddening. Sarah could feel her heart pounding, but deep inside, a fire of determination burned brighter than fear. Neighbors gathered discreetly, watching from their windows. Some had secretly supported her all along, others remained silent, fearful of reprisal. Sarah realized she had become a symbol, the embodiment of resistance against the HOA's arbitrary power. Then an unexpected twist changed everything. A former board member, disgruntled and feeling guilty, contacted Sarah privately. He revealed internal communications, showing that the HOA had systematically targeted residents who questioned their authority. The files contained names, dates, and even threats, proof of a pattern of intimidation that was impossible to ignore. Sarah's lawyer pored over the documents and whispered, "This could be the final evidence we need. If we expose this, the HOA will have no choice but to back down completely." But the suspense was far from over. The HOA learned of this leak and convened an emergency meeting. Rumors spread that they planned to escalate, potentially targeting Sarah with new fines or legal maneuvers. Every day became a strategic game, a battle of wits and nerves. As night fell, Sarah stood in her garden, the gnome gleaming in the soft moonlight. Her mind raced, every decision now mattered. One wrong move could give the HOA an opening. But Sarah knew she had one advantage they didn't: truth, evidence, and unwavering courage. The stage was set for the ultimate showdown. The neighborhood waited with bated breath. Every twist, every threat had led to this moment, and Sarah knew that the next move would decide not only her victory, but the fate of every resident under the HOA's shadow. The courtroom was silent. Sarah's heart pounded as she entered, the gnome's image etched firmly in her mind. Today was the ultimate confrontation, the moment where all the threats, the letters, and the manipulations of the HOA would meet their reckoning. The HOA board sat smugly, confident that fear alone could win. Their attorney spoke first, listing every alleged violation, twisting rules to make minor details seem monumental. The tension in the air was almost suffocating. Every resident watching held their breath. Sarah's lawyer stood, calm, precise, commanding the room. "We have evidence," he said, laying out emails, letters, and even recordings showing the HOA's systematic intimidation. "These rules have been selectively enforced. The fines are arbitrary. The board's actions are unjust." Then came the first shocking twist. One by one, former residents stood up in court, sharing their experiences. Mailboxes, flags, decorations, every story revealed the same pattern. The HOA's power, once invisible, was now exposed as oppressive and unfair. A hush fell over the courtroom. The judge reviewed the evidence. The HOA attorney tried to interject, but Sarah's lawyer anticipated every move, countering each claim with irrefutable proof. Every attempt to intimidate backfired. Then the ultimate twist: the judge revealed that the board had violated their own bylaws by failing to notify Sarah properly and by overstepping their authority repeatedly. Gasps echoed. The HOA members' confidence crumbled. Finally, the verdict: "The fines are reversed," the judge declared. "The board is instructed to cease arbitrary enforcement immediately. Homeowners have the right to peaceful enjoyment of their property." The courtroom erupted. Sarah's gnome, once a tiny target of ridicule, had become a symbol of triumph. Residents whispered, inspired by her courage. The HOA had been defeated, not by intimidation, but by persistence, courage, and truth. As Sarah stepped outside, the sun glinting off her gnome, she realized that the battle had changed the neighborhood forever. Fear no longer ruled. Justice had prevailed. And every resident, watching quietly from their homes, knew that even the smallest act of courage could overcome the mightiest authority. Sarah thought the battle with the HOA was finally over. She had won in court, the fines were reversed, and her gnome stood proudly in her garden. Yet, the shadow of the board lingered, silent, watching, waiting. Just as she began to relax, a new letter arrived. The HOA now questioned minor landscaping adjustments she had made: the slight angle of a hedge, the placement of a flower bed. The board's obsession was relentless, their scrutiny obsessive. Every detail of her garden was under inspection. Then came an unexpected twist. A neighbor, previously silent, approached her with a warning. They're planning something bigger. They don't just target decorations. They want control every inch of your property. Sarah's pulse quickened. The stakes were higher than she ever imagined. Determined, Sarah took action. She meticulously documented every interaction, every notice, every email. The suspense was palpable. Every day could bring a new attack, a new fine, a new threat from the HOA. And then a shocking revelation. Hidden emails obtained from a whistleblower revealed the board had coordinated behind the scenes to intimidate multiple residents, manipulating rules for their own gain. Gasps echoed as Sarah realized the scale of the HOA's schemes. With evidence in hand, Sarah knew she had power beyond the courtroom. She could expose the board, protect herself, and inspire her neighbors. The tension escalated. Every move she made was calculated, every decision critical. The HOA had underestimated her. As night fell, Sarah stood by her garden, the gnome illuminated by the soft glow of the porch light. The neighborhood watched silently. Suspense hung thick in the air. Sarah knew this was far from over. The final showdown had ended, but the war of vigilance, courage, and persistence was just beginning. Just when Sarah thought she had seen the worst from the HOA, a final shock hit. Late one evening, a secret notice was delivered, this time targeting a neighbor who had quietly supported her. The HOA was retaliating, testing whether Sarah's courage had intimidated them enough to back down. Sarah's pulse raced. The board had shown they were cunning, manipulative, and willing to escalate. But she was no longer fearful. With her growing evidence, every email, every document, and every witness prepared to expose their abuse of power, Sarah knew the final play belonged to her. Then an unexpected twist. The neighbor came forward, secretly recording a meeting where the HOA had plotted retaliation against residents who challenged their authority. Sarah's lawyer reviewed the evidence and smiled. "This is it," he said. "We can end this once and for all." The suspense reached its peak as Sarah organized a community meeting. Residents gathered quietly but determined, each aware of the stakes. The HOA members arrived, expecting submission. Instead, they were met with unified defiance. Every violation they threatened to impose was countered with evidence, every intimidation tactic exposed. A shocking revelation came next. A city official, impressed by the meticulous evidence and the courage of the community, stepped in. The HOA was not only reprimanded but forced to restructure their rules, ensuring transparency and fairness. The arbitrary fines, threats, and harassment were nullified permanently. Sarah looked at her gnome, now a legendary symbol of resistance, courage, and justice. The tension, the suspense, the relentless attacks of the HOA had all led to this moment. The neighborhood was free. Residents whispered stories of her bravery. In the end, the HOA, once a source of fear and oppression, was humbled. Sarah had turned the board's own schemes against them, proving that persistence, intelligence, and courage could overcome even the most unreasonable authority. And as the sun rose over her garden, the gnome's sunglasses glinting in the morning light, Sarah whispered, "This is our victory. This is our freedom." After the public confrontation, Sarah thought the HOA's power had been broken, but shadows lingered, and whispers hinted at secrets no one had expected. One night, while reviewing old letters and emails, Sarah discovered a hidden pattern. The HOA had quietly documented every resident for years, keeping secret files of minor infractions and personal habits. The suspense grew as she realized the board's reach was far deeper than she imagined. Every neighbor could have been a potential target, and the gnome had been the spark that lit the fire. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Their tactics weren't just intimidation, they were surveillance, a silent control network. Then came the first shocking twist. A longtime resident, who had never spoken publicly, approached Sarah with a confession. "I have proof that the HOA manipulated past elections, hid complaints, and created false narratives to scare residents into submission." Sarah's eyes widened. The board's corruption ran deeper than she had thought. Determined to expose the truth, Sarah meticulously compiled all evidence, connecting past events with present threats. Each document, each email, each witness statement formed a web of undeniable proof. The suspense was unbearable. If the HOA discovered she had this information, retaliation could be swift and ruthless. Then the ultimate twist hit. The gnome, once just a cheerful decoration, had become a symbol of resistance beyond Sarah's imagination. Stories of her courage circulated secretly among residents. They whispered of her defiance, her strategy, and her unwavering resolve. The board's power was waning, not because of law alone, but because people were no longer afraid. As night fell, Sarah sat in her garden, gnome in hand, heart pounding. The HOA's unseen influence loomed, but she was ready. Every step she took, every plan she executed, built toward a final confrontation that would expose the board entirely. Sarah had begun to feel a quiet victory after exposing the HOA's schemes. But a nagging feeling told her the battle wasn't truly over. One evening, she discovered an encrypted file buried deep in the neighborhood archives, a file no resident had ever seen. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside were emails, secret meeting notes, and financial records, proof of a hidden conspiracy. The HOA had not just targeted decorations or gnomes. They had manipulated property values, harassed residents for profit, and silenced anyone who questioned their authority. The scope was staggering. The suspense was almost unbearable. Sarah realized the gnome wasn't just a symbol anymore. It was a beacon that had revealed the HOA's darkest secrets. She could feel the tension in the neighborhood, the unspoken fear in every corner, and the hidden admiration of those who had long suffered in silence. Then came the first shocking twist. One of the board members had secretly approached Sarah, offering a bribe to suppress the evidence. "Forget this," he whispered. "It's better for everyone." Sarah's blood ran cold. The HOA's influence reached deeper than she imagined, and they would stop at nothing to protect themselves. But Sarah had another plan. She shared the evidence with city officials, journalists, and lawyers. The suspense escalated as the HOA tried to retaliate, issuing threats and sending aggressive notices. Every move was calculated, every threat deliberate, yet Sarah remained steadfast. Then the ultimate twist, a hidden alliance of residents, emboldened by her courage, began to act. They documented abuses, gathered testimonies, and created a network ready to expose the board fully. The HOA's authority, once feared, began to crumble. As night fell over the quiet streets, Sarah looked at her gnome. Its tiny sunglasses reflected the moonlight like a signal. This wasn't just a victory over arbitrary rules, it was the start of a movement. The HOA, once untouchable, had been revealed for what they truly were. And Sarah, armed with evidence, courage, and community support, knew the ultimate resolution was within reach. The tension in the neighborhood had reached its breaking point. Sarah knew the HOA was cornered, but cornered predators are the most dangerous. Every resident watched from behind curtains, waiting to see what would unfold. A secret meeting was called by the board, but Sarah was ready. Armed with the evidence of their secret files, past manipulations, and testimonies from brave neighbors, she stepped forward. The HOA members were blindsided. Their power, built on fear and secrecy, was now exposed in front of the entire community. The suspense skyrocketed. The board tried to intimidate residents, citing rules, bylaws, and fines, but each claim was met with evidence, logic, and courage. One by one, neighbors shared their stories, revealing how the HOA had terrorized, manipulated, and threatened them for years. Gasps filled the room. The tension was palpable. Then came the first shocking twist. The HOA's own bylaws contained clauses that invalidated nearly every fine they had issued. Sarah's lawyer highlighted these clauses, demonstrating how the board had overstepped their authority repeatedly. The board members shifted uncomfortably, their smug confidence evaporating. The ultimate twist arrived when a former board member revealed live recordings of discussions, plotting to intimidate Sarah and others. The courtroom-like scene at the neighborhood meeting left no room for doubt. The HOA had acted with deliberate malice. The atmosphere was electric. With every revelation, the community's courage grew. Residents, once fearful, now stood united. The gnome, perched proudly in Sarah's garden, became the symbol of resistance. Every glare, every whispered approval, every step toward justice reinforced the message. Fear could no longer control them. Finally, the HOA crumbled. The board was stripped of its arbitrary powers, rules were reformed, and transparency was enforced. Sarah's victory was complete. The suspense, tension, and relentless threats had forged a neighborhood united against tyranny. Sarah looked at her gnome in the sunlight, its tiny sunglasses glinting like a badge of honor. She smiled. Courage, persistence, and truth had prevailed, and the story of one tiny gnome had changed an entire community forever. Even after the public reckoning, Sarah knew the HOA held secrets yet to be revealed. Late one night, as she reviewed the documents she had gathered, an anonymous message flashed on her screen. "You think you've seen everything, you haven't." Her heart raced. The suspense was immediate and suffocating. Who had sent the message? Was it another board member, or someone trying to warn her? Every possibility carried danger. The first twist hit hard. Hidden clauses in the HOA's original founding documents detailed powers that had never been enforced until now. Some clauses could allow them to override even city ordinances if unchecked. Sarah realized the battle was far from over. The board could still strike if she wasn't careful. Then came an even more shocking revelation. A former employee of the HOA revealed that the board had secretly monitored residents' communications, tracking dissent and spreading rumors to isolate anyone who questioned their authority. The surveillance was meticulous, methodical, and chilling. The suspense escalated further. Sarah's lawyer advised caution. One wrong move could provoke the HOA to act swiftly, but staying passive could allow them to regain control. Every decision was a high-stakes gamble. Then the ultimate twist. A long-forgotten community ledger contained evidence of collusion between certain board members and outside developers, showing that the harassment and fines were part of a larger scheme to manipulate property values for profit. The stakes were now enormous. This wasn't just about gnomes or aesthetics anymore. Sarah gathered the neighbors and presented the evidence strategically. Fearful whispers turned into courage-filled murmurs. Residents began documenting their own experiences, uncovering more abuses and reinforcing the network of proof. The HOA's facade of control started cracking under the weight of collective courage. Night fell over the neighborhood. The gnome in Sarah's garden seemed to glimmer like a beacon. Every twist, every hidden secret uncovered, every suspenseful moment had led here, to the brink of ultimate revelation. Sarah knew the final confrontation was imminent, and that this time, nothing could stop her or her community.